Hi, I got all my questionnaires filled in, but how do I get them into SPSS?
That's the exciting part. In this video, you'll see how to set up a new SPSS data file, define your variables, and enter the answers from your survey.
Sounds good. Let's get started.
I have opened a new SPSS file here. Let's start with two key buttons you'll need straight away, Data View and Variable View. You'll find them down in the bottom left corner. Click on Data View first. What you see here looks like a spreadsheet. This is where you can enter your values or check the ones you've already typed in. Each row represents one statistical unit, for example, the answers from a single participant. The columns, on the other hand, stand for your variables. But here's the catch. Before you can enter any numbers, the variables have to be defined. For that, we switch over to Variable View. In this view, each row describes one variable, its name, type, and other properties. And to make this really clear, we'll walk through 5 practical examples of different types of data. Remember, every dataset needs to have an identification variable. This could be, for example, a patient number or a pseudonymization code. In the first column of the variable view, you enter a variable name. You can choose this freely, but there are a few rules. The name cannot start with a digit, it cannot contain special characters, and it cannot include spaces. So in our case, let's call it I don't know. In the second column, you define the type of variable. Here we choose numeric because our identification number will be a number. The next two columns specify the format of the variable. By default, SPS shows numbers with 2 decimal places. But that doesn't make sense for an ID number since it's always a whole number. To change this, click into the corresponding field and adjust the number of decimals, either by typing it in directly or by using the arrow keys. For our example, we'll set it to 0 decimal places. In the label field, you can add a description of the variable. This label will appear later in tables and graphs instead of the variable name. So here we could write identification number. For an identification variable, we don't need to make any further settings. And if you now switch back to the data view, you'll see that the variable has been created and you could immediately start entering values. Next, let's define the variable perceived stress level. We switch back to variable view and enter the name stress. To make data entry easier, we'll code the responses. That means assigning a number to each category. So again, the type is numeric and we set the decimals to 0. Now click in the values column. A dialog box opens where you can define the codes. For example, click on Add, then we enter one for low. And click Add. Then 2 for medium and 3 for high. Almost done. Remember, for any variable you want to analyze statistically later on, you should already set the measurement scale at the data entry stage. For stress, we go to the measure column on the right and choose ordinal. That's it, the variable perceived stress level is now fully defined. Switching to data view, you can enter values by double-clicking on a cell. A drop-down list appears and you simply select the category. If the drop-down doesn't show up, click on Value Labels field in the toolbar. This lets you switch between the numeric codes and the category labels. Now let's move on to a quantitative variable, for example, age. Again, we open Variable View, type in the name age, and add a suitable label, such as age in years. For this variable, we can keep the default settings. The only adjustment we need is in the Measure column. Here we select Scale. And that's it. Back in Data View, we can now enter the ages directly. Besides codes and numerical values, in empirical studies, we often also record dates, for example, the date of birth or a diagnosis for a patient. So let's switch back to variable view, enter a name and a label, and then change the type in the second column to a date format. To do this, click in the type field and then on the button that appears on the right. A dialog box opens with different variable types. Here we select date and on the right-hand side choose the format that suits us best. For example, the common format day, month, year with the year in 4 digits. With a click on OK, this choice is applied to our variable. Switching to data view, we can now enter the diagnosis date. Just remember, the date must be entered exactly in the selected format. In our example, something like August 5th, 2025. Now there's one last type of variable, one that's not very common in quantitative research, string. A string variable is used for open questions where participants write down their own answers in text form. So let's imagine we want to capture the text from a comment field. Back in variable view, we first give the variable a name. Then we click in the type field and choose string. Notice that SPSS sets the length of a string variable to 8 characters by default, usually far too short. To increase it, click in the characters box at the top right and enter a larger number, for example 200. With a click on OK, the setting is saved in the variable view. Now switching to data view, we can enter text values into the comment field. With these 5 different types of variables, you are equipped to create an SPSS data file for entering data from any quantitative survey.
Why can't I just enter the answers right away?
Because without defined variables and the right measurement scale, SPSS doesn't know what your data mean.
Ah, so the setup decides how good my analysis will be.
Exactly. Why not try it out right away?